Righty folks, it's 6:03, so we might kick off. I'd like to say good evening to all of you and welcome to the Electors General Meeting, which is to consider the 2022 and 2023 Annual Report, the Financial Statements and Auditors Report. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and their elders past and present. I'd like to remind everyone that the audio of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube, and I request to everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings is prohibited, along with photography in the chamber unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, that brings us to item 1, which is declaration of opening. I declare the Electors General Meeting open at 6 p.m. Item 2 is a disclaimer. The City of South Perth disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Item 3 is announcements from the presiding member. That's me. The format of tonight's evening is as follows. I'll begin by presenting the highlights of the last financial year. I'll then call for questions relating to the annual report, the annual financial statements or the auditor's report for the year ended 30 June 2023. I'll then seek a mover and a seconder from you, the electors, to accept the 2022-2023 City of South Perth Annual Report, Financial Statements and Auditors Report. And finally, I'll be opening up the meeting for general business and allow questions, statements and motions from the public gallery. So, I'd also like to remind everyone that only the electors present at the meeting this evening are entitled to vote. You don't have to vote if you don't want to, but if you are here, then yes, you can vote. And all decisions this evening are to be made by a simple majority of votes. That brings us to item 4, which is attendance. We do have one apology for this evening received from Councillor Blake D'Souza, and I've had a text message from Councillor Glenn Cridland indicating that he'll be along just as soon as he can make it. Item 4.2 is approved leaves of absence, and there are no approved leaves of absence this evening. Item 5 is the City of South Perth presentation for the 2022-2023 year. Please note that the City only prints a limited number of hard copies of the annual report, financial statements and auditors report, but we absolutely do encourage members of the public to view the report on the City's website, and a link was provided on the relevant documents on the agenda for this evening. So I'll turn now to the report itself. As said before, we are here to present the 2022-2023 annual report, annual financial statements and auditors report to you, our people, the electors. The 2022-2023 financial year was a year of very pleasing, remarkable achievement at the City, and I'm very pleased to tell you all that the City's financial health continues to strengthen. It's been wonderful to see the progress that the City has made on a range of fronts to achieve our vision of a city of active places and beautiful spaces with sustainable financial management setting us up for the future. The 2022-2023 annual report, which Council has endorsed, captures the opportunities, the challenges and the achievements of the last financial year. It details the extraordinarily diverse range of services, community programs, cultural events, infrastructure works and major projects that the City delivered across the year. During this past year, we've seen our financial health indicator increase to 90 out of 100 for the 2022-2023 financial year. And that's well above the benchmark score of 70 that's set for us by the State Government's Department of Local Government. 2022 and 2023 also saw the City generate its first operating surplus in 8 years. And what that means is that the City is able to improve and restock its financial reserves and make financially sustainable provision for the replacement and renewal of key public assets that we all rely on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, Council is continuing its work to reduce the financial burden on our ratepayers. Council approved a rates movement of 4.5% for the 2022-23 financial year, which was well below the prevailing rate of inflation per CPI of 7.6%. So this marks the fourth consecutive annual budget where the city's rates movements have been either equal to or below Perth's CPI, despite the impact of COVID-19 and also of some very high inflation. Planning for future population growth remains one of the most important roles of local government, and in March 2023, Council resolved to support the city's new draft Local Planning Scheme number 7. This new planning scheme will provide the framework for the city's continued growth while ensuring that we support the city's local economy. The city invested $5.2 million in roads and pathways to provide safe pedestrian access, as well as a well-maintained road network. James Miller Oval in Manning received 4 new 30-metre towers with LED lighting, which provides more opportunity for sport, recreation and leisure activities for our community. And this project is the latest in a series of lighting projects in our local parks, reserves and ovals, enabling our community to play for longer. Neil McDougall Park in Como saw a $1.3 million lake remediation project. These environmentally sensitive works, which were largely funded by a federal government grant, have substantially improved the water quality of the local ecosystem, as well as reducing the algal blooms and duckweed growths that have plagued the lake for, well, decades now. The city's Elderfield Wetlands Rehabilitation Project in Waterford has also improved water quality and created habitat for water birds and other wildlife. And this very important project was funded by the Swan Canning River Recovery Stage 3, managed by Perth NRM through funding from the federal government. The $600,000 redevelopment and revegetation works were completed in line with the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions requirements. In Salter Point, a 45-metre steel-framed staircase replaced the former stone and timber Redmond stairs, making them much safer for people and pets, and ecologically sensitive LED lighting was fitted to the underside of the handrails to guide nighttime visitors without impacting on the local fauna. There's a beautiful viewing platform midway down the stairs featuring recycled plastic bench seats, and I do encourage you all to check it out if you haven't had an opportunity yet. Our local streets are looking better than ever following the successful completion of underground power projects in Como and Manning, and works also began in the South Perth and Hurlingham areas in October 2022. These works are expected to be completed in May of 2024, delivering better looking streetscapes, increased tree canopy cover, reduced summer heat, enhanced street lighting, and improved property values. These are just some of the city's achievements in the previous financial year, and I would very much like to thank CEO Mike Bradford and the city's administration for their tireless efforts in working towards our shared vision of a city of active places and beautiful spaces. And speaking on behalf of the council at large, it is an honour and it's a privilege to serve as your council. We very much look forward to working with our entire community to continue to deliver great outcomes for this very special and wonderful city. Alrighty, that brings us to item 6, which is the presentation of the annual report, the annual financial statements and auditors report of the year ended 30 June 2023. So we'll start by going to questions in relation to that annual report, annual financial statements and auditors report. We have received 2 written submissions prior to this meeting, and I'd like to begin by inviting Ms. Cecilia Brooke of South Perth. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I speak on behalf of the City of South Perth Residents Association. In your annual report, you say Council continues its work to reduce the financial burden on ratepayers. Council improves a rates movement of 4.5% in the 2022-23 financial year, well below the prevailing Perth CPI. How can you possibly make this statement when in fact the average residential rate charge has actually increased by 6.4%, fueled by an increase in GRV and placing a huge financial burden on ratepayers who in some cases have been saddled with a rate hike of 15%. This money is going straight from the pockets of ratepayers into the council coffers.
Thank you for your question. Mr Adams?
Yeah, unfortunately, Ms Brooke, I think you might have the financial years confused. The 22-23 financial year was not a revaluation year. The 23-24 financial year is a revaluation year. Tonight, we're considering the 2022-23 report. And to be clear, the rates increases in 22-23 was 4.5% against a CPI of 7.6%, with no GRV revaluation occurring in that year. The minimum rate did increase by CPI, so that was different to the 4.5 that was applied against the general residential rate. 22, 23, 24 is a revaluation year, and on average there was a 17.7% increment in GRV valuations across the City of South Perth. However, some property values have increased significantly while others have reduced. It's the redistribution of these valuations against each other that affects what an individual ratepayer's contribution is in terms of rates. So for 23-24, the council resolved to increase the overall rates revenue by 5% as a result of the GRV increment. To generate the required rate revenue, council actually decreased the rate in the dollars. So we only get a 5% rate increase across the whole rates book, although some people do pay more and some do pay less. That happens every 3 years. The city's rate increase for 23-24 was in fact 5%, and it's still below the March CPI of 5.8%. So I hope that clears that up.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Your second question, Ms Brooke?
According to the Council's financial report, the number of residential rateable properties has reduced from 16,869 in 21-22 to 16,292 in 22-23. This result seems to counterintuitive given the number of apartments that have been springing up all over our city. Can you please provide an explanation of how this has occurred?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
Yeah, so again, I think there's a bit of a problem with the numbers that you've taken, because your figures don't consider the residential properties that are on minimum rates. And because the minimum rate changed, there were more residential properties on the minimum rate. So if you look at both the figures for the general rate and the minimum rate, if you look at it holistically, including properties on the minimum rate, residential properties increased by 117 from 19,940 in 21-22 to 20,057 in 22-23.
Thank you, Mr Adams. And your third question, Ms Brooke?
Might be a similar thing for question 3. The number of commercial rateable properties has also decreased from 689 in 21-22 to 678 in 22-23. Can you please explain how this has eventuated, given that the city's costly economic development plan was supposed to increase commercial rates revenue, amongst other things?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams?
Yeah, again, your figures aren't quite correct, because it's similar to the previous answer. It doesn't take into account the properties that were on the minimum rates. But if you do take it into account all of those properties, commercial properties reduced minimally from 768 in 21-22 to 762 in 22-23. So a reduction of 6, which is less than 1%, and could have been due to any number of reasons.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you for those questions, Ms Brooke. I might get you to stay there just because I've got a list of questions from Peter Scott, which I understand that you're reading on his behalf. Oh, I'm happy to do so. I guess I better read them then. All right, is he done? So, these questions are from Mr Peter Scott of Como, who I understand couldn't be here today. There's a short preamble. I'll read that first. So the preamble from Mr Scott reads as follows. Regarding the Collier Park Golf Course, the Council's annual report states the course generated a $795,000 profit for 2022-2023, a 124% increase from the previous year. Included in this figure are the results of the mini golf facility, the newest addition to the course. Mini golf profit increased by 16,000 or 9% year on year, collectively providing a significant contribution to the achievement of the city's strategy to diversify and optimise non-rate income. The July 2023 monthly financial statement provided by the Council covering the full year to 30 June 2023 showed as follows. Year-to-date revenue, $5,224,614. Year-to-date expenses, $3,525,935. That's the preamble from Mr Scott. Mr Scott's first question is as follows. The difference I would expect represents the profit of $1,698,679. So how is it the profit reported in the annual report is only $795,000? I asked this question last year and was told that the difference was due to the deduction of corporate overheads. The question is, can you please provide a detailed account of the deductions made from the July report to arrive at the profit of $795,000? A deduction of $903,679 seems somewhat excessive for a corporate overhead to oversee golf course management. Mr Lecoq, can I send that question your way?
So the corporate overhead is that of the cities and may or may directly or indirectly be associated with the activities related to the oversight of the golf course. Functions included in that corporate overhead are the CEO, executive and management structures, customer communications and engagement, finance, information technology, records management, governance, which includes council, human resources, organizational performance, and work health and safety. These corporate overheads are applied across all non-corporate business units within the city.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. I'll now read the second question from Mr Scott, which is as follows. There is an entry in the borrowing section of the financial report at page 109 that shows an amount of $2,079,401, open bracket, 4.97% interest, close bracket, was borrowed in 2021, and it is shown as 227 Collier Park Golf Course. The detail is not specified as to what this money was borrowed for. Given the timing, it is reasonable to surmise that this was for the construction of the mini golf course. Can you please confirm this? Mr Lecoq, can I send that one your way as well?
Borrowing by local government can only be done in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995, which mandates council approval as part of the budget or specific approval if not part of the budget. Loan 227 Collier Park Golf Course is a 15-year loan originally drawn for $4.76 million in the 2011-12 financial year. It was approved and correctly disclosed in the 2011-12 budget and every budget and annual financial report since. The loan funds were utilised to fund the upgrade of the Collier Park Golf Course Island 9 holes and the course reticulation systems.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. And Mr Scott's final question was as follows. The financial report shows that in 2022-2023, a total of $373,564 of the principal was paid in that year for the Collier Park Golf Course loan. In the borrowings cost section on page 109, it shows that $89,255 was paid in interest on that loan. It would appear that of the $1,698,697 profit that the golf course made, as shown in the July monthly financial statement, the city deducted the cost of repayment of the principal and interest cost. This would leave a profit of $1,235,860, as opposed to the profit reported in the annual report of $795,000. The difference being $440,860. Can you please confirm that both the payment of the loan principal and the cost of borrowing are related to the construction of the mini golf? Mr. Lecoq, I'll call on you one more time.
Again, there seems to be a bit of confusion here as well, because we're not really certain about which July monthly financial reports are being referred to, as the July monthly financial report will only report 1 month's worth of results, i.e. the first month of a new financial year, and therefore will not have a profit figure of $1.6 million. As explained, the city can only borrow funds with council approval in accordance with the Local Government Act. The mini golf, as per many previous clarifications and in accordance with the council resolution approving its business plan, was funded from the Community Facilities Reserve. No borrowed funds were utilized for the mini golf project. The additional revenue generated by the mini golf is being paid back into the Community Facilities Reserve every year in accordance with that council resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lecoq. And that was the conclusion of the questions from Mr. Scott. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask in relation to the annual report, annual financial statements or auditor's report for the year ending 30 June 2023? I'll take that as a no. All right, well, there being no further questions, I'm about to call for a mover and a seconder to receive the 2022-2023 annual report, annual financial statements and auditor's report. Could I please have a mover from the audience? Mr. Les Osdelay, thank you. And if you could specify your address, Mr. Osdelay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unit 224 Barker Avenue, Como.
Thank you very much. And could I have a seconder, please? Mr. Gleeson, if you could please state your full name and address.
Bill Gleeson, 95 Kenny Highway, Southwood.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, I'll put this to the vote. So this is the motion. The 2022-2023 City of South Perth Annual Report, the 2022-2023 Annual Financial Statements, and the 2022-2023 Auditor's Report be received. And just before I put that motion to the vote, I'd like to remind everyone that only electors in the district may raise their hand either way. With that, please raise your hands if you're in favour of the motion that should be on the screens right now. Thank you. And all those against? Oh, that was good. Okay, that was unanimous. Well, thank you all. I appreciate that. All right, that brings us to item 7, which is general business. We have received 12 written submissions prior to the meeting. So I'd like to begin by inviting Ms. Veronica McPhail of Kensington. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome, and we look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you everyone. My name is Veronica McPhail. I am a member of Wildlife Advocacy South Perth. Our group was established to advocate for the protection and safety of the wildlife along the South Perth foreshore. We aim to work collaboratively with stakeholders to ensure current and future generations will be able to enjoy the wildlife of this unique environment. My questions for Council are regarding the dog review. Question 1. Has the December 2023 workshop with councillors concluded, and will the outcomes findings be shared with the wider community?
Thank you. Ms Fry?
Thank you for the question. Following the workshop with elected members in December, the internal working group has identified options for an enclosed dog area. So officers are currently looking at locations and costings and will provide this information to the elected members at the follow-up workshop, which is scheduled to be held in March. So this will then form part of the stakeholder engagement process.
Thank you. The community engagement was scheduled to start February-March 2024. Is this still the intention, and has a formal date been set for this to commence?
Thank you. Ms Fry?
So the stakeholder engagement process and timelines will be developed following the elected members workshop in March.
Will participation in this community engagement be by invitation, or will any member of the community be welcome to attend?
Thank you. Ms Fry?
So the city will be engaging with stakeholders and the community in a number of ways throughout the process. This will include meeting with individual community members and groups and more formalised stakeholder engagement.
Thank you, Ms Fry, and thank you very much, Mrs McPhail, for your questions.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Ms Georgina Wilson of Como, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you for the opportunity. Like Veronica before me, I represent a community group called Wildlife Advocacy South Perth, or WASP, and we are concerned about the management of the black swan habitat on Jeremiah Island. This habitat was officially opened in September 2021, more than 2 breeding seasons ago. We have submitted questions to the City on several occasions about the management and responsibility for this area, but it seems unclear whether the City or the Department of Biodiversity and Conservation and Attractions is responsible. In the meantime, our observations indicate that while cygnets are hatching on the island, the survival rate is very low. So my first question is, what monitoring of swan numbers has been done by the City to evaluate the success of the substantial investment in the black swan habitat?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprima?
Thank you. The Jeremiah Island has a dual function in that it protects the foreshore against water erosion while creating a safe area for wildlife to find respite, forage and breed. The city does not have an ongoing funded monitoring programme for black swans, and it's the Department of Biodiversity and Conservation and Attractions that is responsible for managing native wildlife in Western Australia. 2 years post-completion of the project is still a very short time frame to attribute success or failure of the project, but 7 pairs of nesting swans this spring confirmed sightings of the vulnerable fairy terns, and the regionally threatened native water rat would suggest that the project has been an outstanding success.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo. Your second question?
Yeah. From your records over 2 breeding seasons, how many cygnets have survived to maturity after hatching on the island?
Thank you. Ms Amprimo?
As noted in response to question 1, the city does not have an ongoing funded monitoring programme for the black swans, and this is something that would be the responsibility of the DBCA as they manage native wildlife in Western Australia.
Okay, final question. If the survival rate is very low, as our various observers believe, what will be done to improve this?
Thank you. And just for the gallery, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but we will be respectful of all people. Ms Amprimo, could you please provide the answer to that one?
Yeah, I'll just refer you to the answer to my previous question. We don't have an ongoing funded monitoring programme, so we have no intervention there.
Thank you, Ms Amprima, and thank you, Ms Wilson, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Dr Mark Brogan of Kensington, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors, members of staff. In June 2023, I coordinated with other electors in Kensington the delivery of a petition relating to underground power and the provisioning of underground power. Councillors and members of the City of South Perth staff will be aware that 500 electors is a highly significant number of signatures to obtain in a community of only 1,700 households. The resident action group that collected signatures for the petition found overwhelming support for underground power, with a prevailing sentiment that after 25 years, Kensington has waited long enough. The City of South Perth's annual report for 2022-23, page 32, reports that Western Power has delivered its design study for provision of a solution. My questions are as follows. Now that Western Power has completed its design study and presumably its costing, firstly, would the City outline the project timeline for the provisioning of underground power to Kensington, inclusive of projected dates?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprima?
Thank you. So Western Power has now completed the detailed design for underground power lines in the Kensington project area, and that is different from the piece of work that you referenced. So they have completed the next stage of the project. The design has now been issued to the contractor for a constructability review, and following this, a report will be presented to Council for the endorsement of the project and subsequent charges. The milestones of the project are completion of the detailed design, which has already been done, constructability review, which is underway, and the draft funding agreement review, which is also underway. The final funding agreement and council endorsement of that, which is estimated to be prior to the end of the current financial year. And the current estimates are that construction should commence early in the 24-25 financial year, and they would last in the region of 12 to 15 months.
Thank you. I have some follow-up questions. Question 2. I think you've answered this question already. Maybe you could repeat the projected schedule. When can Kensington residents expect works to commence on the provisioning of underground power?
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
The current estimate is for works to commence in the early part of the 2024-2025 financial year.
Finally, when will Kensington residents receive notices of fees and charges payable?
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
Given the estimated timing of a council resolving to proceed with the project, we would likely to be adopting the charges as part of the 25-26 budget. So we'll be looking at that being confirmed in July 2025.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr Brogan, and thank you, Ms Amprima. I'd now like to invite Ms Amanda Coldham of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome, and we look forward to your questions.
Someone's dropped a ring outside.
Oh, can we have a staff member perhaps collect that and we'll put that in our lost and found? Thank you very much, by the way.
No worries. So I'm Mandy Coldham. I'd just like to mention people can't hear out there. When you're in the foyer, it's very, very difficult to hear at the moment.
All right, we'll do our best. It's not set up for this, but I do encourage people, if you've got your smartphones, we are broadcasting to YouTube as we speak. So if you jump onto the City of South Perth website and follow the links, if you can't hear me, hopefully you can hear me on your smartphones.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. The bridges over Lake Douglas are utilised by many far and wide local residents, Greater Perth, international and interstate visitors. This area is also a wildlife, environmental, habitat and breeding node, providing refuge and breeding ground for many wildlife, including our endangered long-necked turtles. For the elderly, disabled or children, the bridges provide an opportunity for them to enjoy short walks and wheelchair access opportunities. enhancing their and their carers' day-to-day lives. The Lakes and Bridges Walk provide a tranquil area for individual, groups, schools to educate and observe, read and photograph the surrounding wildlife and habitat. One of the visions was to provide natural walks and connectivity in this node. Our bridges allow this for all walks of life, near and far, in a beautiful way. These lakes and bridges that we have all enjoyed for decades should be a priority to maintain and repair in the 24-25 budget so that future generations can continue to enjoy them as we have. So my question, is it the council's intention to retain and maintain Lake Douglas, Lake Hurlingham and Lake Tonduit for the enjoyment of future generations?
Thank you very much for the question, and clearly from the heart. Ms Emprema?
The city currently maintains Lake Douglas, Lake Hurlingham and Lake Tonduit as part of the Sir James Mitchell Park. The city has no plans to cease doing this work.
Thank you. And your second question?
Ms Amprimo, I can't quite hear you. Could you possibly speak up?
The city currently maintains Lake Douglas, Lake Hurlingham and Lake Tonduit as part of the Sir James Mitchell Park. The city has no plans to cease doing this work.
Thank you. Question 2, is it the council's intention to repair and maintain the bridges and pathways leading to the bridges on both sides of the lake in the upcoming 24-25 budget?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
The city is preparing options, including high-level costings for the refurbishment or replacement of the bridges for council's consideration during the budget setting process. It will be a decision of council if any of these options are included in the 24-25 annual budget.
Thank you. And my last question, does the council have any commercial buildings or zoning changes planned for the Lake Douglas, Lake Hurlingham and Lake Tonduit precincts?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
The city has none planned.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for your questions. I'd now like to invite Mr David Coldham of South Perth. Sorry, Amanda, I've got a note here saying that you're reading Mr... Oh, it is Mr David Coldham. Yep. Yes. There you go. Disregard that note then. No, welcome to you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors.
Look forward to your questions.
Right.
And welcome to Councillor Critland.
Thank you. Now, just on those bridges, to give you an idea, I'll cut the preamble down, but basically a walk around the bridges, a walk around the lakes with the bridges in place is about 700 metres. Take the bridges out and it becomes about 1.5 kilometres, so it's a substantial increase. The question that I have is it the Council's Administration Department's recommendation to remove the bridges and the extensive concrete pathway leading to the bridges on both sides?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
So I'll refer to my previous response. The city is preparing options including high-level costings for the refurbishment or replacement of the bridges for council's consideration during the budget setting process. It will be a decision of council if any of these options are included in the 24-25 annual budget. There are currently no plans to modify the path network in the location.
Okay, and just another question, will the council prioritise the repair and upgrade of those bridges?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
That will be a decision of council.
Right, okay. And just one other last question. Is the council's intent to replace the bridges with some commercial structures incorporating a cafe or accommodation?
Thank you for the question. Ms Emprema?
The city is not aware of any proposal to install commercial structures incorporating a business or accommodation.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Ms Emprema, and thank you, Mr Coldham, for the questions.
No dramas.
I'd now like to invite Ms Annie Harris of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Annie. I'm a speech pathologist working in disability. I'm speaking today to alert the council to the importance of the Lake Douglas bridges for the public's access to wildlife and surrounding areas of the lake. The bridges are very well used by the public, in particular people with access requirements such as wheelchair users, people with poor vision, and people with a range of other disabilities, in addition to families with prams and elderly. The bridges provide safe access to the lakes and enable the community to gain a vantage point of endangered turtles, birds, and other wildlife. The risk of not having access to the bridges is extensive. For example, increasing the risk of falls trying to navigate grass rather than solid surfaces, people taking preventable risks to get closer to wildlife in the lakes, and reduced visibility of vulnerable community members viewing the lakes. For some people with disability, it removes their access to the lakes entirely. This has additional risks of reducing exercise options and community access, social isolation, and flow-on impacts to mental health. Section 23 of the Disability Discrimination Act, 1992, completion number 38, access to premises states that it's unlawful for a person to discriminate against another person on the grounds of their disability by refusing to allow the person access to or use of any premises that the public or a section of the public is entitled or allowed to enter or use. The whole community have access to the lakes via the bridges. Removing the bridges removes access to the lakes for people with disability. In the Council Strategic Community Plan for 2021 to 2031, they state the key strategic directions are community, our diverse community being inclusive, safe, connected and engaged. I find it difficult to understand why the Council are removing access for people with disability when this is point 1 of the Council Strategic Community Plan. So my first question, why, when the Council states that their strategic direction is to have an inclusive community, are they removing access to Lake Douglas for people with disability?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprema?
Thank you. Yeah, the bridges are closed for all users on the grounds of public safety.
Yes, but if they don't be put back in, that removes access for people with wheelchair to...
Ms Harris, I appreciate the passion, but it's not really a forum for debate back and forth between the officers, but please do ask your second question.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I just wanted to show that that's not the question I was asking. Is the Council's intent to retain Lake Douglas and surrounding foreshore for all people in future generations and wildlife?
Thank you. Ms Amprema?
So the city currently maintains Lake Douglas as part of the Sir James Mitchell Park, and there's no plans for the city to cease doing that work.
Good, thank you. Number 3, how has the Council made the complaints and feedback regarding the bridges being closed accessible to people with disability so they can express their thoughts on the matter and show their support for the bridges?
Thank you. Mr Bradford?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question completely, but I'll have a go at answering. If I get it wrong, please correct me. We've got various mechanisms by which anyone can make contact with the city and provide feedback at any time, by email, by phone, by letter, or make a request. And also in something that's localised like this, I'd encourage people to reach out to their ward councillor as well. So they are the mechanisms by which people, and we do receive feedback about the bridges, particularly in other matters. So they are the mechanisms that are available. I don't know if that answers your question though.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Vicky Redden of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to 24. So I'm Vicky Redden from representing the South Perth Peninsula Action Group. For those unfamiliar with the peninsula down near the old mill, it's persistently being inundated with hoons in heavily modified cars which cause excessive noise, and often this happens from 8 till about 2 in the morning. Not just on weekends, and the situation's not improving, it's getting worse. This issue is far from novel to just South Perth, it's worldwide. The vehicles, modified for maximum sound, repeatedly backfire, creating a nuisance that echoes through the Mill Point area. The hoons further aggravate the situation by speeding back onto the freeway, then exit again to the car park for spins and burnouts, cheered on by crowds of 20 or 30 people. This antisocial behaviour is unacceptable. It's turning our local streets into racetracks and it's putting people's lives at risk. As confirmed by the EPA, prolonged exposure to loud noise adversely affects health and wellbeing. The impact is further heightened when the noise disrupts sleep, causes difficulty falling asleep, or frequent awakenings during the night. Our neighbours are reporting experiencing these symptoms multiple times a week. It's crucial that this matter is resolved promptly to safeguard our collective wellbeing. Some work's been done and we're really grateful for the city's initiatives installing speed humps, CCTV cameras and a speed display sign. And we're also deeply appreciative of the recent meeting with the CEO, Mayor Milner, our local representative, Mary Choi, MLA Jeff Baker and Superintendent Beer, where the local residents were able to chat and share the impact that this is having on them. This is not a frivolous concern. It's a serious issue that is ingrained in the city's strategic community plans, which emphasise community protection, safety and wellbeing. So, the perplexity. Businesses are required to control workers' noise exposure and the duration. Local city laws regulate the noise emanating from our residences. Events, whether a carnival, a concert or even Wanneroo racetrack, are bound by stringent state government laws. Cities worldwide have regulations curbing vehicle noise. My question is, why can't the city do something unique and enact laws or regulations to quell this antisocial behaviour, at least, if nothing else, in its own car parks?
Thank you for the question. Ms Emprema?
The city is well aware of the problem and has been working on behalf of residents to stop this behaviour. However, noise emissions from the propulsion and braking systems of motor vehicles operating our road is exempt under the Environmental Protection Noise Regulations 1997. It is captured under the Road Traffic Act 1974 and the Road Traffic Code 2000, which falls under the jurisdiction of the police. The city does not believe it has the power to make a local law or issue infringements with regard to this behaviour. However, we will be seeking further advice on the matter in order for council to be fully informed as to what action can be taken.
Sounds good. Question 2. Impacted residents are frequently advised that they need to document number plates and record video evidence of hooning incidents to subsequently make a report for the police. And I can assure you this is no mean feat. Given that the issue has persistently plagued our community for more than 4 years, we presume that comprehensive data collection has been undertaken to evaluate the magnitude of the problem. Can you tell us how many cars were in and around Millers Pool car park between 8 and 2 on Friday, Saturday and Sunday nights this past weekend?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
The city's equipment monitors and records information. However, the city only releases data and CCTV footage to the police where requested to manage privacy requirements. To give an indication, however, between 8 p.m. and on Friday and 2 p.m. on Saturday morning, an average of 21 vehicles were in the Millers Pool car park with police present at 11 p.m. Significantly less vehicles were in the car park on Saturday night and Sunday night. Hooning is reported to the police, and at the community meeting last Friday, the police advised that it can be reported on the 131444 number if it's occurring right at that moment, and online if reporting an incident later. The police also advised that you only need the information you have to hand to make a report.
Okay. Those reports, if you don't have all of that information, mean nothing. This is a serious safety issue. Our hearing is at risk. If you have to raise your voice to be heard by somebody only a metre away, your hearing is going to be damaged eventually. Depending on the length of time, say 85 decibels for 8 hours, your hearing will be damaged. At a level of 140 decibels, your hearing will be damaged immediately. What is the peak level of noise that these Hoons cars are producing along Mill Point Road during the last weekend?
Thank you. Ms Emprema?
As the vehicles on the road are not captured by the Environmental Protection Noise Regulations 1997, which is the legislation that the city's environmental health officers are qualified to utilise and enforce for noise complaints, we don't capture this information. The regulations do not apply to certain noise emissions, including the noise of vehicles which you mentioned, and that is something that is captured by the police, so we don't monitor that noise.
Thank you, Ms Zampremo, and thank you, Ms Redden, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Luke Terry of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, everyone. The Lake Douglas bridges were built in 1987 to allow accessibility in and around the lake's precinct. To date, the bridges have been used by many people near and far. They allow people with mobility impairments, prams, bird watchers, event photographers, and even the local schools to access and enjoy the natural beauty of our landscapes and our wildlife habitats without directly disturbing the nesting grounds for both the water birds and now the endangered long-necked turtles. This was further confirmed in the South Perth Foreshore Management Plan of 2015, where one of the endorsed actions includes improved pedestrian access and bridge connections back to the adjoining street, and as a current plan, this is what the council should be still working towards. My first question is, can the City Administration please explain what transpired between the repairs to the Lake Douglas bridges and reopening early last year, and the subsequent closure again due to apparent safety concerns? What is the actual problem with the bridges, and how much will it cost to rectify those problems versus replacing the bridges?
Thank you, Mr Terry. Ms Zampremo, can I send that your way?
Thank you. The initial assessment of the bridges was high level and identified some repairs that were required. The initial repairs were carried out and a detailed assessment of the bridges was also commissioned. Following the more detailed assessment of the bridges, the city was advised that the bridges should be closed to the public on safety grounds. The detailed assessment identified key structural elements of the bridges that were beyond repair. The city's investigated options to replace both bridges with the cost estimates in the region of between $800,000 and $1 million. Repairs to the bridge, while slightly cheaper, would require significant design work before we could get a more accurate cost estimate on that option. However, the high-level estimate that we have, even without that design in place, doesn't indicate that there would be a significant reduction in the investment that would be required.
Thank you, Ms Zampremo. And your second question, Mr Terry?
Will the City Administration be recommending to Council to repair and or replace the two Lake Douglas bridges on the South Perth foreshore as part of upcoming annual budget workshop deliberations? And if not, why?
Thank you. Ms Zampremo?
The city will include options for replacement and repair in the list of capital works for Council's consideration through the draft budget process.
Thank you. And your third question, Mr Terry?
What is likely to happen to the Lake Douglas bridges if the City Administration does not recommend their repair or replacement in the next financial year, or Council does not prioritise it in the next budget? And what will be the cost of no action compared to repairing or replacing the bridges?
Thank you. Ms Zampremo?
Based on the feedback that the city receives from Council through the budget workshops, the city may need to scope and cost some other options, but at this stage we have limited what we're proposing to Council to be the replacement options, and pending that feedback we may look at other options.
Thank you, Ms Zampremo, and thank you, Mr Terry, for the questions.
I'd like to move a motion.
We'll get through the questions first, but then I'll...
and then we'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd now like to invite Ms Helen Tomasic of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions. Yeah, just there. Thanks.
Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for attending that's supporting the investigation with Sir James Mitchell Park. Back on the 11th of December, I actually sent a letter to the Lord Mayor and all the councillors here tonight, and obviously there's one missing. And I'd like to thank two in particular for their responses, Councillor Mary Choi and also the other councillor is, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but I'll try. Jennifer Navard, is it Navard? Or, yeah, okay. And just a short, normal one from Mr. Councillor Coveney, who just a one-liner, nothing more than that. My first question is, which I don't know who will answer, I will read it out to you. It is, why weren't the residents that will be impacted by this proposal, I don't know if the rest of the people here are aware, they're planning to do sporting grounds for Wesley College. The actual thing is called 10.3.1, Sports Spaces Investigation / Feasibility for Sir James Mitchell Park. So why weren't the Mayor, this is actually addressed to you, why weren't they informed in writing? Maybe my standards are a bit high, but in my former council, where I used to reside for 23 years, anytime there was anything, any changes to the street or any works done, everybody involved in that street were always notified.
So can I just get you to clarify the question, please?
It is, why were the residents that will be impacted by this proposal not informed in writing by the Mayor / Council?
Thank you very much. Ms Shaw?
Thank you for your question. The City sought Council approval to proceed with the feasibility study in the first instance, as it requires a budget allocation to commence the investigation. Given Council has approved consideration of an allocation in the mid-year budget review, once this is adopted, the City can commence the feasibility study, which will include formal public consultation. So at that point in time, we'll be writing to the adjacent and affected landowners and occupants, seeking their comments on the proposed feasibility.
Right, okay. If that's the way you want to do it, that's fine. Question 2, can I have a copy of the brief once it's done, if it hasn't been done, given to the business that's going to be handling this investigation or feasibility study, please?
Thank you.
Because as you know, sometimes, this is just my opinion, things are left out and then you're out of budget. I mean, you might say it's going to cost 1 million and then there's add-ons. It's always blows the budget. So hence we've got to get the right information to them first.
Thank you. I might just cut you off there because it is for public questions. There is an opportunity to make statements, but for the time being, we'll answer the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, and I actually agree. Given the mid-year budget review is yet to be considered by Council, the City has not yet finalised a detailed brief for the project. Notwithstanding, as outlined in the December 2023 report to Council on the matter, the feasibility study will include investigating all relevant considerations, such as geotechnical, environmental, operational and financial implications, as well as community and stakeholder engagement. The City will determine which components require an external consultant in respect to expertise and which elements can be completed by the City in-house. And we'll certainly be considering all the detailed financials around each of the individual components.
Okay, but can, ratepayers get a copy of what you propose, please?
Yes.
Good. Question 3, the name of the person or councillor involved in handling and managing the investigation with the person that's going to do the feasibility study. And are the ratepayers that are interested, are they able to be notified in writing of the full outcome?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Yes, so the City's Community Culture and Recreation Services will be responsible for the project itself, so they'll be preparing the detailed brief for a future consultant. A consultant's yet to be appointed given the brief is yet to be prepared. Once that's available, we'll be able to provide information as to what's contained within the brief.
Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Ms Tomzik, for the questions.
My question was, will we be notified of the result? That's the main
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so once the feasibility study has been completed, a report would be presented back to council. Anyone that's put in a submission during the feasibility study will be notified of the dates that matter would be considered by council, and you'd be welcome to attend that meeting.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. And I've received a submission here for a statement by Ms. Cecilia Brooke of South Perth. Invite you to the microphone. Welcome again, and looking forward to hearing your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading this year's annual report certainly provides us with a general overview of how the city has managed our finances and outlines the many projects that are underway and are in the planning stage for future implementation. This sounds all very positive, and if the report is referred to in coming years, it will portray a positive, well-managed council. For those of us who have been interested and actively involved in commenting on some of the decisions made by council, we see things a little differently. One, during the last October election, there was evidence of significant campaign donations to some elected members. While permissible within the local government guidelines, elected members need to be mindful of public perceptions. Two, lessons should be learned of how to progress with large infrastructure projects without generating significant bad will in the community and not denigrating organisations such as COSPRA for pointing out significant financial shortcomings in a project like the RAF, concerns that were well and truly vindicated when the project was abandoned. As a consequence of the overlap of this issue, a code of conduct complaint was raised against a fellow elected member. Our organisation has also been named and criticised for being outspoken against the project when our issue was financial reality and the false expectations that were being sold to the community. COSPRA believes that the city needs to strengthen its project management process. The city has a checkered history of managing major capital projects and has spent millions of dollars on projects that either did not result in an asset for the community or in assets that may not be providing a return on investment as good as could have been achieved. Projects that we might have benefited from a more rigorous process include the RAF, the Australian Centre, mini golf, and the Manning Hub, even though the project was successfully executed. The city has several major projects planned over the next decade, including a Challenger master plan, George Burnett facilities, and a hockey stadium at Sir James Mitchell Park. The use of a careful, honest, and comprehensive project development process would ensure that these and future projects do not get in front of themselves, have an increased risk of becoming financially unviable, or fail to consider options or alternatives in the cheaper, earlier stages of the project. Fortunately, the RAF is now a distant memory, and a council composes of new faces. Some of the angst that existed over the last couple of years between the city and the community will be behind us. And we are looking forward to working with a positive, progressive council and wish you all the very, very best for the coming year. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your statement, Ms. Brooke. I'd now like to invite Mr. John Bassett of Como. I understand that you've got a motion that you'd like to move. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Bassett. So just before we get into the first motion of the evening, well, the second, I guess, I'm going to ask the mover and the seconder to clearly state their name and their address. First, we'll have a motion moved, then we'll have a motion second, and then the mover will be given an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes in favour of that motion. I will allow questions to be asked if there's any need for interpretation or clarification of the motion at hand. And after that, we'll put the motion to a vote by a show of hands, which will be resolved by a simple majority. So with that, Mr. Bassett, if you'd like to read your, first of all, read your motion as mover, and then I'll seek a seconder, and then you'll be given an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes to that motion.
Thank you. The motion that I posted on the council website.
And just if you could state your name and follow.
Yes, sorry, John Bassett. I live at 14 Hobbs Avenue, Como.
Thank you so much.
I've had the chance to rethink the motion. So the motion that I'm putting today is that the City of South Perth prioritises the review of the 2018 to 2023 urban forest strategy to incorporate a tree canopy target of 30% by 2040. This should be supported by appropriate planning, policy changes, funding, monitoring, education strategies, and annual reporting. In addition to that,
Mr. Bassett, that's a bit of a mouthful over and above what we've originally got on the screen. Is there any chance, governance, is there any chance that if Mr. Bassett reads that slowly, we'll be able to get the revised version on the screen? Is that possible? Or if you've got a copy of the new motion there, if that could be provided to governance, and we'll get that on the screen.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Bassett, if you don't mind, what I might do is to give governance a chance to properly type out your motion and give everyone an opportunity to see it on the screen. I might move to the second motion on this thing. Is it okay if I call you back after they've had a chance to type that up? Thank you very much. I really appreciate your cooperation. So I'll invite the South Perth Peninsula Action Group forwards. Now, I understand there's 5 motions here that are effectively all relating to the same issue. What I'm going to propose, if I've got that correct, is that we get all 5 of those motions up on the screen at the same time. I'll allow each speaker who is going to speak to each one of those 5 motions to speak for 3 minutes apiece, assuming they're all moved and seconded, which I assume they will be. And then we'll vote on them as a group. Is that acceptable to your group, Ms. Redden?
Yes, that's what we agreed to save time. So
fantastic. That will save everyone a bit of time.
So you've got those 5 motions there, I think.
Oh, so you can't put up the 5 motions for while you're retyping that? Okay. Are we able to flick to the South Perth Peninsula Action Group motions for the time being? Or have I just completely wrong-footed?
I can read them out if you like.
See if we can get them on the screen, but I will get you to read them. There we go. I think that's the best we're going to be able to do for the time being.
Okay.
If you could read the motion then, and then we'll see about seconders.
Okay.
Oh, and please remember the name and the address.
Yep. So I'm Vicky Redden, 63 Mill Point Road, and the chair of the South Perth Peninsula Action Group. And I'll just start talking because we moved it around to save time. So I'll just start talking and then I'll hand it over to Cindy in a moment. For years now, members of the South Perth Peninsula Action Group have been reporting large gatherings of hoons at the car park under the Narrows Bridge, who then speed around the neighbourhood, making as much noise as
Sorry, Ms Redden, I'll get you to read the motion on the screen first. I presume you're moving that. Then I'll get a seconder, and once we've had a seconder, then I'll give you each 3 minutes to speak to the motion.
Okay. Move that the city work strenuously with main roads to have the speed limit reduced to 40 kilometres an hour in the South Perth Activity Plan area, that being the Peninsula, South Perth Esplanade and Mill Street area.
All right. Did you want to read all 5 so that we can do them all there? I can see that's number 4.
Okay. Okay, number 1 is move that the city trial closing the Millers Pool car park area and the adjacent water ski car park on the opposite side of the Narrows Bridge every night between 9:30 and 5 a.m. for a 4-week trial period, so that the city can determine if there is a reduction in hooning and consequential change to the noise and impact on residents. Motion 2 is move that the City of South Perth CEO follow up with the police department, specifically the traffic police, to look at what speed cameras can be installed along Mill Point Road to curb the incessant hoons and motorbikes who drive at speed, creating excessive noise. The next one is move that the city conduct a trial on the South Perth Peninsula using noise cameras, like the devices being trialled on the East Coast. These are believed to be operational and effective in at least half a dozen cities worldwide. And the last one is move that the city coordinate a more effective and comprehensive blitz on hoons for a month. This would require an enthusiastic participation of not just the city and rangers, but main roads and the WA Police Department.
Thank you. So you're moving that, Ms Redden?
Yes, so I'll go back to justification.
And to just chase a seconder,
Okay.
have we got a seconder for that block of motions? Yes, if you could stand up, sir, and please give us your name and address.
Douglas Henson, 1 Sterling Street, South Perth.
Thank you so much. Ms Redden, each of you now have 3 minutes to speak to these motions.
Okay, thank you. For years, yes, so one obvious move would be to reduce the overall speed in the South Perth activity plan, that being Peninsula area. Mill Point Road North is a local distributor and was never designed for the current level of traffic. As we know, and now know, it should also never have been an exit from the freeway. But that's what it is, and that's what we've got. With the imminent arrival of another couple of thousand cars per day arriving and leaving Civic Heart, the traffic on this end of Mill Point Road will rarely get above 20 kilometres an hour if it's moving at all. Even though this reduction will likely annoy legally abiding residents and visitors, it will allow violators to be apprehended and fined with very serious fines when they exceed the limit. The only way we're going to stop this aggressive, dangerous hooning behaviour is to make it very inconvenient for them. At the moment, they openly flaunt their illegal behaviour and have even been seen to give the finger to police. More and more people are reporting that their friends will not visit. Overseas visitors are horrified that this behaviour is allowed to continue in our beautiful setting. The manager from the Peninsula Apartments told me this morning that they've had record complaints from guests about hooning and noise this summer. These hoons regularly travel at 80 to 100 kilometres, well and truly above 100 kilometres an hour along the foreshore, the Esplanade and Mill Point Road in the middle of the night. A fine for more than 19 kilometres over the limit is only $400, but if it's 40 kilometres an hour, it's $1,200, and that's only 80 kilometres an hour if it's reduced to 40. An overall reduction in speed would also cut down on the noise of the Wombat crossings by trucks and trailers, which is also something they don't really speed, but when they're not used to it, their trailers and trucks do bounce over it, causing excess traffic, excess noise. But the less speed will reduce the hooning. It won't stop the hoons, but if we get some serious police presence down there, it may start to hit them in their back pocket. And with any hope, it may remove their licence. So I'll hand over to Cindy Tondud, who's going to talk through the trial of closing Miller's Pool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors, for giving me this opportunity. My name is Cindy Tondud and I live at 34 Mill Point Road in South Perth. I've resided there for the past 9 years. I've talked to lots of people living in South Perth Peninsula who would like to see Miller's Pool car park, as well as the water ski car park near the Narrows Bridge, closed at night to stop the hoons having a convenient meeting place. When I moved to South Perth in 2015, I thought my new home on the South Perth Peninsula was one of the best places to live in Perth, if not the world. But over the last few years, as the hoons targeted the Narrows Bridge as their meeting place, my enjoyment has progressively diminished to the point that I have days where I want to leave my lovely home and community. I fear the danger of speeding cars. I can't stand the revving and the backfiring. The hoons are now causing me to lock us into our apartment in the early evening rather than enjoy our balcony and the wonderful outdoor life. And worse, there are many nights that I can't get to sleep because of the noise from the hoons. I get woken by the hoons that are backfiring and revving their high-powered vehicles right outside our apartment block at midnight. What I have described is no longer an occasional Saturday night. It is now every night as well as the weekend, and that's increased over the last few years. It is so persistent that I'm really angry. It is stopping my family from visiting me, with my daughter too scared to drive along Mill Point Road in the late evening for fear of encountering
one of these high-powered speeding cars. I sometimes feel people think I'm exaggerating, but I know I'm not. My husband and I drove down to the Narrows Bridge last Saturday at 10 p.m, and the Millers Point car park was overflowing, with some cars parked on the grass verge. There were around 80 cars, and there were high-powered vehicles arriving and leaving in droves. When we drove around to the adjacent water ski car park, which is not well lit, and we saw another dozen cars parked in a group, a few with their bonnets up, so there were nearly 100 cars in total. I know that closing the car parking near the Narrows Bridge would inconvenience some law-abiding citizens from enjoying that section of the river after dark. But sadly, since the Hoons have arrived, very few people other than car clubs visit the area after dark. Closing the car parks at 9 or 9:30 p.m. would allow families to stay a while after their picnic dinner. The fishermen can park a bit further up, but they won't have to put up with the Hoons. During the 4-week trial, the
Ms.
city...
Tonduit, I'm so sorry, that is 3 minutes, but I do have to be fair to everyone. You've got a third speaker, though, for the effectively the third motion.
Thank you.
Welcome to you, and if you could please state your name and an address, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts as well.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. My name is Kerry Jones, and I live at 12 Stone Street in South Perth. We all believe that police need to install or set up speed cameras in the area regularly. We have not seen a speed camera in this area, even though this ongoing problem is incessant. These Hoons have hotted up vehicles, modified chassis lowered with massive exhausts, and the ability for vehicles to backfire loudly at will. Most recently, extremely loud motorcycles are joining in. Some of these motorcycles seem to be just making as much noise as possible, which is considerable, and some joining in the racing around the streets and using the circuit of Mill Point Road, the on-ramp, Mitchell Freeway, back to Millers Point car park at excessive speed and noise. This is causing potentially very dangerous and one would think illegal activity, which is having a massive and ongoing impact on the residents. The stationary camera checking and displaying the speed of all vehicles, which is already installed near Scott Street, was effective for a time until the Hoons realised there was no penalty or fine associated with breaching the posted speed limit. We believe a permanent camera would also soon be avoided once the location of the camera was identified by the Hoons. Therefore, we suspect a mobile camera would be preferential. The 50k speed limit is currently being exceeded every day and every night of the week. We believe concealed cameras in vans and irregular visits by police with handheld speed detection devices, particularly between nightfall and midnight, would be more effective and successful in catching offenders, and hopefully the word would soon spread within the Hooning community. If these practices could be supplemented by traffic police stopping excessively noisy cars and motorcycles for inspection, we feel sure we would witness a rapid decrease in both speed and noise. Another issue in the same vein is the noise and behaviour generated by tow trucks, which use the same area of Mill Point Road for quick access to the freeway. This is convenient for them should they receive a call out, an accident on the freeway. These tow trucks frequently sit along Mill Point Road in no standing zones and in people's private driveways. If the trucks have been travelling in the opposite direction, they will come off the freeway, usually at high speed, continuing down Mill Point Road to make a U-turn at the first possible opportunity and race back out onto the freeway. All of these manoeuvres are executed in a very dangerous and aggressive manner. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, very much for the opportunity to speak on this matter.
Thank you very much. Is that all the... oh, we got... yes. Welcome. If you could please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Scott, 34 Mill Point Road. That's certainly, the latest version. Okay, my angle on this problem is noise cameras. These cameras exist. They're operating in numerous cities around the world, maybe not numerous, but at least half a dozen that I know of. They're being tested on the East Coast. They're expensive, but they work because they take video and audio of any vehicle that's in excess of the decibel limit that's allowed. Now, we don't have a decibel limit that's allowed, but that's got to be part of what's coming, because the more buildings we get, the worse this problem gets, because it's the noise as they're going through the larger buildings just reverberates and accentuates. So my view is that, and my proposition is that as expensive as they are, a noise camera is an important trial that should be looked at hard by the various authorities. It's not just the council, but it needs to be the police and the state government. And even, and although that we have a situation where until there is legislation at a state government level, we wouldn't, fines wouldn't be able to be issued. One unit strategically placed, and these are big units, these can't be mobile, this would be on a pole and permanent. One unit placed in the right place, which I think, but others might think differently, would be at the intersection of Mill Point Close and Mill Point Road, would be able to monitor the the under bridge car park, the first 200, 250 metres of Mill Point Road, which is a bad area, and also Mill Point Close, which is part of the racetrack that someone referred to earlier. As a community, numerous people I've spoken to, and the wider SPAG group has spoken to more, there is even, they feel so strongly about this that there is a willingness to consider contributing, participating in a funding of such a test unit. Now, one of the reasons people are so even keen to put their hand in their pocket is that they, and it's an important one, they don't believe the report-a-hoon system that the police had is either fair or equitable. It's not fair for the reasons I think Vicky said earlier.
Mr. Scott, again, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but
okay.
that is 3 minutes.
Happy to go.
Thank you. And we've got one more speaker.
Yes, Council. My name is Douglas Minchin of 1 Stirling Street, South Perth, and I want to encourage the city to coordinate a far more energetic campaign that is a blitz on hoons for approximately a month. This would require the enthusiastic participation of not just the city and its rangers, but probably include main roads and the police department. This insidious hoon problem has to be stopped. The World Health Organization considers average road traffic noise levels above 53 decibels to be associated with adverse health outcomes. Currently, we knowingly are allowing this damage to happen. We have to stop talking and start doing. And it was great to see you and others at the meeting last Friday. That's the first step. This insidious hoon problem is really annoying so many people in South Perth that a number have already left. Somebody has left our apartments at Riviera, and others are considering leaving because of the hoon problem. And we don't want this to continue right up the street and put a bad reputation on the peninsula and South Perth. The traffic police need to be involved to conduct car checks on the legality of modifications that have been done to these cars, issuing infringement notices or yellow stickers, and hopefully confiscating cars of habitual hoons.
This could involve blocking the entrance to Miller's Pool car park for a period of time after, say, 10 o'clock, while several police check the vehicles and motorbikes within the car park and talk to the drivers about the problems caused by hooning. This blitz could also include regular booze and drug buses and involve police roaming in and around the area on the same nights with speed guns and speed traps. Perhaps place a confiscated crushed car down at Millers Point car park. That would get the message across. Where these hoons congregate with a large poster or electric sign, something like "Blitz on Hoons, is your car next?" If there's further room, you might add, if you don't want your car to be next, then go to Wanneroo Raceway and race it legally, not on South Perth built-up roads. It is an issue. I frequently watch them. I went down there last night and observed it. There was like gunshots going on, reverberating through Mill Point Road, and it must scare a lot of people. It doesn't scare me as such, but it does keep me awake. And just finally, I'll conclude Cindy's final sentence, which summarises what she was saying. During the 4-week trial of closing those car parks, the city can gather accurate data that either supports or disproves what she and many others believe will have a big impact on reducing the hooning. The closure of these car parks after dark would help achieve that.
And that is 3 minutes. And thank you very much for the presentation there. So folks, this is the part of the evening where if anyone wants to ask a question about clarifying the nature of the motion, they're not our motions, so we might not be able to answer them, but Mr. Gleeson, if you'd like to come to the microphone. So a motion has been moved. This is an opportunity for people to ask questions of the motion that's on the screen right now. Was there anyone else that wanted to ask a question about the motion that's on the screen right now? That's a no? Okay, then I'm about to put the composite motions to the vote, all 5 of them together. It's going to be by a show of hands, so just hold up your hand for a while there until I say put them down. All those in favour of the 5 motions on the screen? I have a feeling I know which way this is going to go. All right, hands down. Anyone who's against the motions that are on the screen right now? I can see one hand, that's optimistic, but I think that one was carried. Sorry, was that? Yeah, it was seconded, so that's right, yes, but thank you for asking. Well, I can confidently say that motion, well, those 5 motions were well and truly passed, so thank you for that. I'd now like to invite Mr. John Bassett of Como back, where we should be able to have his revised motion up on the screen. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Bassett. And just for the purposes of the recording, if you could please state your name and address one more time.
John Bassett, 14 Potts Avenue, Como.
Thank you very much. Governance, are we able to get Mr. Bassett's motion up on the screen?
Shall I read the full motion again?
I'll give it just a moment so that, that people can read it off the screen with you while you're reading. Here we go. And if you'd like to read your motion, don't go to the reasons yet, just read the motion itself and then I'll see about a seconder.
The motion is that the City of South Perth prioritises the review of the 2018-2023 Urban Forest Strategy to incorporate a tree canopy target of 30% by 2040, supported by appropriate planning, policy changes, funding, monitoring, education strategies and annual reporting. And further to that, to present to the March 2024 Council meeting a report that includes a project outline and timeline for the review of the Urban Forest Strategy, which reflects the urgency of this review.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. I'm now going to ask if there's anyone that would like to second Mr. Bassett's motion. Yes, please. Ms Redden, if you could stand, state your name and your address.
Vicky Redden, 63 Mill Point Road. I second the motion.
Thank you so much. Mr Bassett, you have 3 minutes.
I'm sure I won't take that long because really the reason for continuing the urban forest strategy is fairly obvious. It's stated in the previous 2018-2023 strategy. But briefly, it's reasonably well recognised that the increase of tree canopy in any region will produce a reduction in heating within that region and the consequent reduction in the need for artificial cooling and so on. Despite several inquiries from residents, Council has not updated the strategy after it expired last year and has given no indication of when the strategy will be reviewed. As I said, the benefits have already been well documented, but the next 5 years are critical in extending the existing canopy. In fact, currently, we don't know what the state of the existing canopy is, but it is worth noting in the previous report and the strategy, Council is to be commended in increasing the canopy by 20%, but at the same time, there was a reduction of 20% on private properties. So in that regard, the suggestion of a 30% canopy coverage by 2040 is ambitious and I would suggest not achievable by Council. Really, we need to engage in an education strategy that allows people to realise the reasons for an increase in the canopy and the advantages to the whole community by increasing the canopy. It's worth noting that the Strategic Community Plan for 2021 to 31 recognises in sections 3.31 that we maintain and improve the ecosystem biodiversity of the city. And in 3.3.2, we enhance the city's urban forest. Without an urban forest strategy, what I suggest is that the city is failing to address the objectives of its own strategic community plan by not having a current strategy. So that is the background to my motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Bassett. This is the opportunity now, folks. If anyone has any questions about the interpretation or the clarification of Mr Bassett's motion, would anyone like to ask a question? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say that I think it's a great motion. I wasn't aware of it, but with climate change occurring, we want to reduce carbon levels from where they are, it appears, and does improve, as you say, it does cool. It does, aesthetically, it's beautiful to see trees. I'd like to see a lot more trees planted Australia-wide. We're taking out trees with urban development.
I might just interrupt there. I appreciate the sentiment, but the questions are if there's any uncertainty about what Mr Bassett is proposing, if you need clarity. All right, very good, thank you. All right, if there's no questions about the interpretation or clarification of Mr Bassett's motion, I'll put it to a vote by a show of hands. So all those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them up until I say put them down. No, I think that's probably pretty good. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands and hold them up. That's pretty clear. Mr Bassett, your motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Now, I am conscious that Mr and Mrs Terry did indicate that they wanted to move a motion. If you'd like to come to the microphone. Do you have it in writing by any chance?
No, it's just kind of scribbled for me, but it's not long.
Okay. Perhaps if you could read it slowly then, so governance has got a chance to sort of frantically type.
I'll be slow. Okay, so I'd like to move a motion that the City of South Perth undertake to do all things necessary to repair or replace the two Lake Douglas bridges for the reasons mentioned in our preamble earlier this evening. And these works to be prioritised for in 24-25 financial year. Thank you.
Right, I'll just give governance a motion to catch up, and governance, if you'd like me to, do you need that repeated?
Oh,
Did you have it in writing there that you might be able to pass up to our officers?
yeah, I've got kind of other stuff, so hang on, just rip all my other bits off and you can have it there. Yep, that's it. There you go.
All right, I'm being told
Sorry, I
that...
didn't realise I needed to have it typed.
No, that's okay. I suppose I'll just get an indication from the crowd, and this is hugely irregular, but I've got the power to do it. Do people need it on the screen, or have people got the gist of what's being proposed here?
Well, if I can have my 3 minutes, I don't really want to talk for 3 minutes, but I can explain.
Hold on, I've got to get a seconder first. But Ms Terry, could you please state your full name and address as the mover?
Michelle Terry, 22 Jubilee Street, South Perth.
Thank you. And Mr Terry, did you want to second that motion?
I'm a minor, so am I able to
He's
do
16.
that?
Is he allowed to?
Is that allowed? No,
Okay.
we do need another adult.
I've got another one.
Yes. Name and address, please, sir. Thank you. All right, the 3 minutes is yours.
Okay, I won't take a full 3 minutes, but my concerns are the bridges, which we really don't know what's wrong with the bridges, why they've been closed for the majority of nearly 12 months. They, as you would have heard this evening, everyone has pointed out that they're used by everyone in the community, near, far, and we're all here because we're concerned about the bridges. So that's why my motion is to move it, that you do take it as a priority. There was a surplus in 23 with the council, so I'd like them to take this as a priority. There's one thing to start new projects, but why not maintain the things that need money spent on them first before looking for new and better things? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who wanted to ask any questions about the interpretation or clarification of Ms Terry's motion? I'm going to take that as a no. All right, in that case, we'll put it to a vote by way of a show of hands. All those in favour of Ms Terry's motion, please raise your hands and keep them up. All right, thank you. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them up. Ms Terry, your motion has been carried.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the questions, statements and motions that I've been given prior notice of. Is there anyone else who has any questions or statements or motions? I think Dr Brogan was first, if you'd like to come. So, Dr Brogan, if you could please state your name and address again and then indicate whether you're asking a question, making a statement or moving a motion.
Mark Brogan, 14 Market Street, Kensington. I'm moving a motion, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the introduction. It's concerning street tree management. I have a copy of it, so I'm happy to pass it to governance for putting on screen.
Yes, please.
Okay. Just a little bit of preamble, just a couple of sentences. This really relates to the kinds of objectives that Mr Bassett was talking about and the need for us to do things definitively on tree canopy and preserving our valuable trees. The motion is that the City of South Perth's Street Tree Management Plan be updated to reflect current issues and new practices and to maximise community benefit. The update should specifically provide for A, mandated street tree provision on all verges where trees can physically and practically be accommodated, that is, not optionally or opt-in. B, a move away from the traditional street tree theme approach in order to provide biodiversity and resilience to pests and diseases. C, maximisation of the canopy that street trees provide, aiming for continuous canopy coverage after 20 years of moderate growth, and the combined value of all trees on a verge to be 1.5 times the verge area. D, that the street tree species list include default street tree species that are large trees native to the local government area and provide food and habitat for our local fauna and are not susceptible to Polyphicus shothole borer. E, tree species susceptible to forecast rising temperatures in our warming climate and known pests and disease be removed from the street tree species list. F, street tree removal to facilitate private development being more strongly discouraged through policy, and where removal of a street tree to accommodate development cannot be avoided, the amenity value for the tree paid by the adjoining landowner being allocated to the street tree budget. G, authorisation for removal of street trees to facilitate private development or street parking be removed from the Chief Executive Officer's delegations and instead being a decision of the Council. I've just got a couple more. H, where a street tree has been vandalised, signage being installed in its place to notify the community of the vandalism. In the past, the City has done this. And finally, I, developers to pay a bond of sufficient amount to cover the cost of remediating damage to a street tree resulting from building activities.
Thank you, Dr. Brogan. And just before I seek a seconder on that motion, I hadn't realised how long that motion was when we passed it up. We're not going to be able to get that on the screens right now. It's going to take a while for governance to type that out, and then they've got to make sure they've got it correct. But I'm happy to read it one more time. I've got your hard copy here if anyone in the gallery doesn't feel like they've got the gist of what you're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy for you to do that. I do have a statement of rationale if...
Yeah, we'll get to that after we've got a seconder, but yes.
I just have a suggestion. Perhaps the city officer could rush out and scan it instead of retyping. Might be a whole lot more efficient.
Well...
I think that's a useful suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
I really appreciate the sentiment, but this is the reason why we get people to submit things in advance so that we can have the screens available rather than having our officers running around and doing that. I will read it one more time just for the purposes of clarity, but perhaps this is a reminder for everyone for next time. It really does help us a lot if you get the questions, the statements, the motions to us ahead of time so that we can facilitate showing everyone on the screens what the motions are. So I'll read this one more time, then I'll see about a seconder for you, Dr. Brogan, and then we'll proceed as normal. So the motion is that the City of South Perth Street Tree Management Plan be updated to reflect current issues and new practices and to maximise community benefit, including A, mandated street tree provision on all verges where trees can physically and practically be accommodated, open bracket, not optional or opt-in, close bracket. B, a move away from the traditional street tree theme approach in order to provide biodiversity and resilience to pests and diseases. C, maximisation of the canopy that street trees provide, aiming for continuous canopy coverage after 20 years of moderate growth, and the combined value of all trees on a verge to be 1.5 times the verge area. D, the street tree species list, including default street tree species, which are large trees native to the local government area that provide food and habitat for our local fauna and are not susceptible to folifigus, I hope I've pronounced that right, shot hole borer, i.e. chewit, jarrah, flooded gums. E, tree species susceptible to forecast rising temperatures in our warming climate and known pests and disease being removed from the street tree species list. F, street tree removal to facilitate private development being more strongly discouraged through policy, and where removal of a street tree to accommodate development cannot be avoided, the amenity value for the tree paid by the adjoining landowner being allocated to the street tree budget. G, authorisation for removal of street trees to facilitate private development or street parking being removed from the Chief Executive Officer's delegations and instead being a decision of the Council. H, where a street tree has been vandalised, signage being installed in its place to notify the community of the vandalism. And I, developers to pay a bond of sufficient amount to cover the cost of remediating damage to a street tree resulting from building activities. So that's Dr. Brogan's motion. Can I call for a seconder for Dr. Brogan's motion?
I'm happy to second that. I'm Bronwyn David, 46 Anstey Street, South Perth.
Thank you, Ms. David. Dr. Brogan, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, the rationale for this is fairly plain from the comments previously made by Mr. Bassett in relation to the urban forest strategy. In essence, these planned changes to the South Perth Street Tree Management Plan will assist with the urban forest strategy in securing the goals for tree canopy that the City of South Perth desperately needs. The tree canopy of the City of South Perth has actually decreased by 50% since the 1960s. We know this from satellite imaging. So we're looking at a significant problem which needs multiple pathways and approaches to address in a significant way. Trees are highly valuable community assets that deliver multiple environmental, social and economic benefits, not least of which being shade and cooling in our warm climate. They are critical to the green and leafy character of our streets, for which our streets are often so lauded. Just on the matter of urban heat islands and the effects of global warming and climate change, do we really want to see children in our parks exposed to park equipment and playground equipment where the ambient temperature is in the vicinity of 70 degrees centigrade? These issues are looming and we need multiple approaches to deal with these kinds of effects. This is the urban heat island problem, which is another issue that goes with climate change and our inability to protect our surfaces and facilities from the loss of tree canopy and the extreme heating that arises. As street verges are public land and street trees are valuable community assets, and adjoining landowners should not be able to influence whether or not a street tree is planted, as is currently the case. If a verge can physically and practically accommodate a street tree, it should, for the greater good. Increasing community awareness when street trees are vandalised can act as an effective deterrent to reduce vandalism of trees and should be utilised by the city, and as I've mentioned, this has happened in the past. The best way to do this is with the use of signage at the location of vandalised trees and publication of locations of vandalised trees. Given that one of the more important roles of street trees is to help to cool our suburbs through shading and transpiration, it is critical that the canopy cover they deliver is maximised. It is also important that the other benefits of street trees are maximised, particularly the food and habitat that they provide for our local fauna. The city's street tree list should be updated to better reflect these factors. The city's street tree list should also respond to increased pressure from rising temperatures and new pests and diseases such as the Polyphagus shot-hole borer, which has recently, as many people will be aware, been a problem in Hyde Park with the Moreton Bay figs. The street tree theme approach is no longer appropriate under these circumstances and biodiversity should be prioritised. For example, many Perth local governments are now choosing to no longer plant WA peppermints as they will struggle in the hotter temperatures we will experience in Perth in future decades. Provisions to ensure that street trees are not removed unless all alternatives have been exhausted need to be strengthened. Where approval to remove a tree is supported, the costs paid by the landowner to compensate the community for the tree must be used to plant replacement trees. Similarly, developers should be required to adequately compensate
Dr. Brogan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
about to finish.
I've got to be fair to everyone. I am sorry, but I will throw it open now if anyone has any questions. Thank you. Mr. Osdelay, if you could please stand up, state your name and your address and ask your question.
There's Osdelay, Unit 2, 24 Barker Avenue, Como. Thanks, Dr. Brogan. I have a question about, I think it's point G, where you're asking the city to develop a policy, and then you're telling the CEO they can't use their decision-making powers to implement that policy. It says remove delegation of the CEO. Was that the wording I heard?
I think this is aimed at improving accountability in the exercise of their decision-making powers.
I don't understand the rationale. If you have a policy, any decision that's made has to be in accordance with that policy. Just the rationale doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's only me.
That would be my point.
So that was your response to Mr. Osdelay's question? Okay.
Yes.
All right. In that case, I'll throw it open to anyone else that wants to ask a question for the clarification or interpretation of Dr. Brogan's motion. No? Okay. In that case, I'll put Dr. Brogan's motion to the vote by a show of hands. All those in favour, please raise your hand and keep them raised. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. Dr. Brogan, your motion has been carried.
Thank you.
Now, folks, is there anyone else that wants to make a statement, ask questions, or... Yes, Mr. Gleeson, if you'd like to come to the microphone, state your name and address, and we look forward to hearing your motion.
Mr Mayor, councillors, my motion refers to a letter that I sent to all councillors back in 9/1/24 regarding honour boards in the City of South Perth.
If you could
Motion.
read the... Yeah, absolutely. Please read the motion, yes.
That the CEO, Mike Bradford, CEO, instruct the local history librarian, Anthony Stein, to prepare a report to council on how best to display the revived honour boards and photos of former elected members of the City of South Perth and place them in an appropriate place.
Thank you, Mr. Gleeson. Would anyone like to second Mr. Gleeson's motion? Mr. Osdeley, if you could please stand and name and address.
Les Osdeley, Unit 2, 24 Barker Avenue, Como.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gleeson, you have 3 minutes to give your reasons.
Thank you. I have here, Mr Mayor, councillors, 2 medallions. One was given to all the school children in the City of South Perth back in 1959. It states on the back, in commemoration of the elevation to the title of the municipality of the City of South Perth, and it has the City of South Perth logo, crown on the front. 15 years ago, the city put a medallion out celebrating 50 years of the City of South Perth becoming a city. And on the back, it states, celebrating the history and caring and the opportunity in the future. I'll read my letter. The City of South Perth laid a foundation stone to the city in 1904. This means this year, 2024, will be 120 years old anniversary for that event. 1992, South Perth became a municipality. 1904, laying the foundation stone of the municipality office, corner of Main Street and Mill Point Road. In 1905, the municipality was divided the city into 3 wards. In 1922, South Perth became a district road board. All the above events became due to the administration and the elected members. The City of South Perth employ a local history librarian, Anthony Stein, who collects and records the history of the City of South Perth. Some time back, the CEO at the time, Jeff Glass, undertook to renovate part of the city administration building. In doing so, all the honour boards going back close to 100 years and photos of previous councillors, were removed from the councillors' function room. It is now 2024 and they still now remain gathering dust in the basement of the city library. Whilst I agree that those who are not aware that the honour boards were not very functional to view and read the names of the former councillors to begin with. The South Perth Civic Manning Bowling Club, South Perth Football Club, rugby clubs, tennis clubs, cricket clubs, golf clubs, and even the croquet club all have honour boards display. It seems a shame that all the other clubs...
Mr Gleeson, I'm so sorry, that is 3 minutes, and I do have to be fair to everyone. But I will, at this point, ask if anyone's got any questions about the clarification or interpretation of Mr Gleeson's motion. I'll take that as a no. I'll put your motion to the vote now, Mr Gleeson. All those in favour, could you please raise your hands and keep them raised? Thank you. And all those opposed, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Mr Gleeson, your motion has been passed.
Mr Mayor, just on a good note...
You can make a statement or a question.
Statement.
Yep, fire away. You've got 3 minutes.
I wish to congratulate the City of South Perth for holding Australia Day on the 26th of January 2024. The Governor of Western Australia and you, Mr Mayor, both said we live in the best country in the world. Free of conflict, we are democratic, and we're very multicultural. 101 people became Australian citizens on the day. If we change the flag, change the national anthem, and change the date, those same people will complain about something else. God bless Australia.
Thank you, Mr Gleeson. Is there anyone else who would like to... Yes, the gentleman in the blue shirt. If you'd like to come to the microphone, name and address again, and if you could please let us know if you're making a statement, asking questions, or moving a motion.
Douglas Minchin again from 1 Stirling Street, South Perth. It occurred to me following, it's a question basically, without notice, I'm sorry, so I'll read it out. And it just came to me tonight talking about the Hoon issue and other traffic issues. With the increased traffic pressure on Mill Point Road caused by predominantly larger apartment blocks being built, for example, Civic Heart, we've got many others in the pipeline, Lumiere and potentially other developments. Has the council, in conjunction properly, I think, with Main Roads and the state government or other involved bodies, considered an alternative access to the South Perth Peninsula and surrounding areas from the freeway for the traffic heading north? Potentially other options would be to look at a flyover or tunnel. Flyover is probably cheaper. Coming through at Judd Street or South Terrace, and there may be other options. So the question is, has the council considered this, looking at traffic going into the future? And if they haven't, I suggest they do, and will they?
It's a pretty big question, so I'd forgive the officers if they took that one on notice. But Ms Ampremo, should I send that in your direction?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The off-ramps of the freeway are the domain of Main Roads WA, so they're not actually part of the city's road network. So any changes to the freeway would be something that would be instigated and determined by Main Roads, not the city.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo, and thank you, Mr Minchin, for your question. Ms David, yes, if you'd like to come to the microphone, state your name and address and let us know if you're making a statement, asking a question or moving a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. I'm Bronwyn David of 46 Anstey Street, South Perth, and I'm here to move a motion, and I've got a copy of it if you want to get the government's guy over. This one's much shorter than Dr Brogan's. You can hand them around. Thank you. My motion is that the City of South Perth urgently present to the Council alternative options for the protection of large trees on private land for the council to progress as a priority when the planning minister announces his rejection of the draft local planning scheme number 7 tree protection provisions.
Thank you very much, Ms David. Is there anyone that would like to second that motion? Dr Brogan, thank you. You have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much.
Ms David.
I'm aware that this council cares deeply for the urban canopy and is very concerned about it, and I know that because you inserted into your draft local planning scheme number 7 protections for trees on private property, and even when those provisions were thrown out and it had to come back and be resubmitted, you then sought the residents and ratepayers' views, and I know you've got an overwhelming majority of people in favour of those provisions, and you reinserted them and went back to the Planning Commission with the draft local planning scheme. I understand that the draft local planning scheme has come before the State Planning Commission and now is in the Planning Minister's inbox. The word on the street is that similar provisions put forward by Nedland City Council have been refused, and so it stands to reason that in due course the provisions for tree protection that the City of South Perth put forward will also be refused. Now, I don't think I have to elaborate on how vital trees are to our urban environment, and I would like the city to think hard and to give appropriate recommendations to the council about what we can do next to protect trees on private property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms David. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question about the interpretation or clarification of Ms David's motion? I'm going to take that as a no. I'll put Ms David's motion to the vote then. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. Ms David, your motion has been carried. Now, I see a lady there, and if you'd like to come forward, please state your name and address and let us know if you're moving a motion, asking a question or making a statement. And once again, folks, it really does help governance and the meeting a lot if you're able to submit these ahead of time so that we can have them up on the screen for everyone to see.
Humble apologies, health issues, couldn't manage it.
All right.
Was beyond my capacity. Heidi Schmidt, 31 York Street, South Perth. So I will read the motion part slowly. That the City of South Perth forthwith determine, budget for and implement an audit of tree species known to provide food and or roosting places for black cockatoo species within the City of South Perth as a matter of priority, and that this data be made available to the public. Us. Specifically requiring audit are the Pinus pinaster and macadamia trees within the city, as they're proven to be a premium core food source species and roosting sites for these endangered birds, as documented by researchers at Murdoch University, the known national researchers for our birds that live here. Endemic species, including Mary, Jarrah, Banksia and Hakea, are also critical food sources.
Is this all one motion, Ms Schmidt?
Yep, got a clock here. I'm not going over.
No, the clock isn't for the motion itself. I'm just wondering.
I'm nearly done.
Hold on, Ms Schmidt. Okay. I'm just asking if you're going into your reasons rather than the actual motion.
No, it's a specific motion. So
this is the motion, okay.
Yeah. Endemic species, including Mary, Jarrah, Banksia and Hakea, are also critical food sources as they provide additional nutrients and so must also be audited. This audit data should be mapped and include location of trees by species, numbers of each species per location, age of trees, and any intended removal of such trees within 5 years, including stating the reasons for intended removal, so like ageing or whatever, plus what species and numbers of trees will be planted to replace them, including any timing for any removal. So it's specific. We need to know this data because right now we know we
Ms
have
Schmidt,
some.
what you are saying right now is clearly reasons, not an actual motion.
So
Ms Schmidt,
that's the
Ms
motion.
Schmidt, please stop talking over the top of me. This will go much better if you listen when I'm gently trying to help you. Perhaps if you could please recast your motion in terms of what it is you want the city to actually do. Don't include the rationale for it in your motion. You can say that in your reasons as to why the gallery should pass your motion.
In a snapshot, because we're unable to quickly scan this to put it on the screen, it must be retyped, that the city undertake an audit of all food and roosting trees, including Pinus pinasta and macadamia and endemic species within the city of South Perth in a timely manner. Is that
Much better, thank you.
Good.
Is there anyone would like to second Ms Schmidt's motion? The gentleman in the back there with the blue shirt and the beard, if you could please stand up and let us know your name and address. Thank you so much. Ms Schmidt, you have 3 minutes to provide us with your reasons.
Okay. Rationale. I'm going to go fast. Rationale. Undertaking this audit in a timely manner is critical to ensure the ongoing provision of both food and roosting sites for the endangered carnabies and the red-tailed black cockatoos. The red-tail is likely to be listed as endangered in the near future with only 15,000 birds left at 2015. So we have less than that now. And any Bourdins cockatoo that may traverse the city. We see and hear these birds in our backyards as they are literally starving. They are looking for food among Cape lilac and other exotic trees in people's gardens and on street verges. Carnaby's cockatoos are listed as endangered at both state and federal levels. They rely heavily on pine as a food source, given that there is not enough native food left for them in Perth. This is pivotal. It takes 9 hectares of endemic tree species like Marri and Jarrah to provide the same food as 1 hectare of pine or macadamia trees. Adequate forward planning for regeneration of both species is pivotal to the survival of these much-loved birds. The only way to halt and reverse the decline of the black cockatoos is to safeguard their remaining food sources and roosts and plant additional high-value food sources such as pine and macadamia. Pinus pinasta is drought tolerant and does not affect water usage like some other species may. The city tells us that nothing grows under pines, but pine trees do grow under pines. All 3 black cockatoos have suffered a sharp and massive decline in recent decades, as noted by Murdoch University. BirdLife Australia said if this continues, we're likely to see the extinction of the Perth population in the next 15 years, and that clearing of any pine would contribute to this. Taking this action is not a choice or something to be put off for another time or another budget. It's an obligation to both the birds and the people of South Perth.
Thank you, Ms Schmidt. I'm now going to open up the floor to any questions about the interpretation or clarification of your motion. Are there any questions from the floor? Yes, Mr Minchin, I've got it now. And name and address again, I'm sorry.
1 Stirling Street, South Perth. I do sympathise with you. I do. Cockatoos are wonderful birds. It's great to see them. I see them around the golf course up the road here. Unfortunately, a lot of the pine trees are dying, not because they're being culled, because they're healthy, but they get diseased and they're old and they're falling down, and they're not native.
Mr Mitchin, I appreciate the clarification, but it's really questions if you don't understand or you want clarity of the motion.
But I'm just wondering the cost of doing an audit of all trees. I think you said all trees in South Perth, so that would include all parks and gardens.
Well, specifically the ones, that's why the motion was so long, because it had to be specific species.
All right. Mr Minchin, again, I get where you're coming from, but it's not really going to, do we understand what Ms Schmidt's motion is actually about? So it's not really the forum for this.
I'm just wondering if it's feasible.
Good question, but that's not what the forum's for at the moment. You can either vote for or against afterwards. Is there anyone who would like, wants to ask a question about clarity or understanding what it is that Ms Schmidt's motion is proposing? No? In that case, I'm going to put it to a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour of Ms Schmidt's motion, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. Ms Schmidt, your motion is passed.
Thank you.
Now, there's a lady in the middle row there. If you'd like to come to the microphone, please state your name and address and let us know if you're moving a motion, asking questions or making a statement.
Apologies, I have a copy of my motion, I'm so sorry. My name is Ellen Miller and I live at Unit 2, Number 3, Hopetown Street, South Perth. My motion is, excuse me just 1 moment. My motion is retraction of misinformation stated in the My South Perth magazine. I am putting the motion that the City of South Perth ensure that the printed misinformation sent to 40,000 residents in the My South Perth magazine, stating that black cockatoos become too heavy to fly after eating pine nuts, be visibly and transparently retracted and corrected in the next issue of that magazine and on the city's website.
Thank you very much. I didn't catch your surname, I'm afraid.
Miller.
Miller. Thank you, Ms Miller.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to second Ms Miller's motion? Yes, Ms Schmidt's as seconder, if you could stand. Thank you very much. Ms Miller, you have 3 minutes to give your reasons.
Thank you. My rationale is the first issue of My South Perth magazine contains these statements. 1, the city plans to replace non-native trees such as pine and macadamia with banksia, eucalyptus, hakea and grevillea endemic to the area. 2, pine and macadamia provide very fat-rich foods, and that can lead to the birds becoming too heavy to take off the ground quickly, contributing to frequent bird injuries or fatalities from predator attacks and collisions with cars. In urban areas, these birds feed especially on pine plantations, since their endemic food species, namely jarrah and Maori, are so very scarce. Many are struggling to find enough food and have even taken to feeding on exotic trees, such as Cape lilac in people's gardens. Out of necessity, these birds have adapted to and now rely on feeding on both pinus and macadamia, both of which are much higher in nutrients than endemic species, with endemic species providing additional nutrients, but lesser quality in food. Rather than replace pinus and macadamia, the city should be adding endemic trees such as Maori, jarrah, hakea and banksia to non-native trees, thereby giving the birds a greater food source, more choice, and a greater chance at survival as endangered species. After extensive communications with BirdLife Australia, Murdoch University, and a variety of expert wildlife organisations, there is no evidence that suggests that these birds get too heavy to fly if they eat macadamia or pinus nuts. In fact, carnabes and red-tailed black cockatoos do not get too heavy to fly from what they eat. They are large and powerful birds that can fly long distances. They can eat up to 10% of their body weight per day, but they also burn a lot of calories during flight and digestion. Therefore, they do not gain excess weight that would affect their ability to fly. Under inquiry and scrutiny, the City cannot substantiate the information in the article, nor provide any reliable source for the false statements other than one officer's mere hearsay or misinterpretation of facts. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms Miller. Now I'm going to open up to the floor for any questions about the interpretation or the clarity of Ms Miller's motion. Are there any questions to that effect? No? In that case, I'll put Ms Miller's motion to a vote by way of a show of hands. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Ms Miller, your motion has been passed. Okay. So at this stage, if there's a lady there in the middle row. If you'd like to come to the microphone, please state your name and address and indicate whether you're moving a motion, asking a question or making a statement.
Sylvia Serra, 17 York Street, South Perth.
Thank you. I didn't catch your surname.
Serra.
Sarah, thank you.
I'd like to move a motion
If you could please read your motion.
that the City of South Perth amends the workforce structure in the next budget to include a full-time equivalent position responsible for coordinating and managing all matters pertaining to the urban forest across the 7 suburbs of the City of South Perth.
Thank you very much. Is there someone who'd like to second that motion? Mr. Ridgway?
Sorry, Greg, could you read that out loud because I cannot hear her. Something I didn't hear.
I haven't got a copy, but Ms. Sarah, could you read it one more time, please?
Yep. That the City of South Perth amends the workforce structure in the next budget to include a full-time equivalent position responsible for coordinating and managing all matters pertaining to the urban forest across the 7 suburbs of the City of South Perth.
Thank you. Did everyone hear that? Good, okay. Is there anyone that would like to second Ms. Sarah's motion? The lady there in the green shirt, if you could. Thank you very much. Ms. Sarah, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Large councils may have several work units and offices that each have a role that impacts on the protection and management of the urban forest. This is significant when staff might be located at different sites or offices, limiting interactions and the ability to coordinate appropriate responses. The City of South Perth's canopy cover has been declining steadily for some time. In 2020, it was only 17%, and it is much likely lower now as a consequence of ongoing removal of trees on private land for development, plus now also as a consequence of the polyphagous shot-hole borer. If our suburbs are to remain livable and retain their green leafy character, we urgently need the City to prioritise our urban forest. A full-time urban forest coordinator at the City of South Perth would be responsible for overseeing and coordinating the City's urban forest actions and initiatives, including the urgent review of the urban forest strategy and implementation of its identified objectives and actions. It would provide community and other key stakeholders with a focal point and foster community engagement and education. This role will be a great filter to deal with tree issues, to enable other staff within the City to work more efficiently and effectively at their core business, adding to the City's productivity and responsiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, is there any questions from the floor about the interpretation? Mr. Osdalay, if you could please stand, name and address and the question that you'd like to ask.
Osdalay, Unit 224, Barker Avenue, Comat. I understand the importance of the function. What I don't understand is, does it require a full-time officer or a part-time officer? I think just plucking a full-time officer out of the air doesn't actually achieve anything. I think we should be focusing on the function, not the officer. Just my opinion. Do you have a view?
I think it should be a full-time officer, yes.
All right. Ms. Schmidt, if you could stand, name and address and your question.
Schmidt, 31 York Street, South Perth. My question is, why do we need a full-time officer rather than a part-time officer? It sounded from the motion that full-time is a requirement. And I guess my question is based on the fact that I know while the City of Melville is much larger than ours, they have 10 urban forest team members, education officer, coordinator, all the rest, apart from their parks team. So we definitely need a full-time, or could
I think so.
part-time do it?
I believe so. I think it's a critical issue.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions from the floor? No. In that case, I'll put Ms Sarah's motion to the vote. All those in favour of Ms Sarah's motion, please raise your hand and keep them raised. All right, thank you. And all those opposed, please raise your hand and keep them raised. Thank you. Ms Sarah, your motion has passed. All right. Is there anyone else who... Right, I think the lady there was first. And once again, folks, I know I've made the point before, but for the future, if we can submit the motions, if you're asking to bring motions to this meeting, if you can submit them in advance to our governance team, because it's awful hard for people when they're seeing something for the first time to sort of listen to it once and know what they're voting on. If you could please state your name and address and whether you're asking a question, making a statement or moving a motion.
I'm Valmay Stonehouse. I live at 99A Forest Street, South Perth. I'm making a motion. And my motion...
Please proceed, yeah, if you could read your motion.
That the City of South Perth ensure that the past practices regarding tree vandalism on the City of South Perth land are reinstated. This should include large, obvious signage stating what has occurred, as well as replanting of 2 trees per tree that's been vandalised.
Thank you. Is there someone who would like to second that motion? Ms Sarah, if you could please stand and name and address and... Thank you. You now have 3 minutes if you would like it, Ms Statehouse.
In the past, the City of South Perth installed large metal signage stating that a tree in this location had been vandalised and 2 trees were replaced for the one that was vandalised by the city. This practice has ceased, yet the trees are still being vandalised, poisoned, pulled out, cut down, ring-barked, etc. in an increasing and alarming rate. A couple of recent examples include along the nature strip in Salter Point to create views for a property yet to be built, and in the street verge outside St Columbus Church. Without any repercussions, this vandalism will only increase. It is therefore a matter of urgency that the successful practice of publicly stating vandalism and replacing trees quickly to reinstate as a matter of urgency. I note, large metal trees exist in the South Perth depot and can be used for this purpose, moved from site to site as needed, along with additional signage and trees to be procured for the purpose. Note, large banners are used in Sydney suburbs to both combat and shame tree vandals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the floor if anyone has any questions about the interpretation or clarification of Ms Statehouse's motion. Are there any such questions?
Stonehouse.
Stonehouse, my apologies, I misheard you. Ms Stonehouse's motion. No? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of Ms Stonehouse's motion, please raise your hands. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Thank you. Ms Stonehouse, your motion has been carried.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who has a question, statement? Yes, the lady there. If you could please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and let us know if you're moving a motion if you're asking a question or making a statement.
Hi, my name is Selena Hughes. I'm at Unit 2, number 71 Gardner Street in Como. I'm stating a motion.
Please read your motion.
Okay. That the City of South Perth lobbied the Western Australian Local Government Association, or WALGA, via a motion at the next South East Metropolitan WALGA Zone meeting to urgently procure updated tree canopy and heat mapping data for the Perth and Peel area in order to provide a better understanding of the current canopy situation and inform planning, policy changes, funding and monitoring.
All right, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone who would like to second Ms Hughes' motion? Thank you, Ms David. Ms Hughes, you have 3 minutes.
The West Australian Local Government Association, WALGA, is the umbrella organisation for all councils, allowing councils to cooperate and share costs for projects wider than and individual town or city councils. We need the data because if we can't measure what is happening with the trees, then we can't fix the problems. All policy and activities by all levels of government should be informed by accurate information. And you can only get that information by getting up-to-date, accurate data. Particularly, I have been noticing a lot more raising of blocks in recent years. So that would be part of the reason why. Anyway, there is a general understanding that tree canopy is necessary for quality of life, cooling and obviously habitat for native animals. In order to inform policy and activities in relation to tree canopy, we need to know how much there is, where it is, and where we need more of it. By working with WALGA and other councils, the cost of obtaining this data will be rationally spread over a number of bodies. So we will get quality information and we will get value for ratepayers as well. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who has any questions about the... Yes, Ms Schmidt, if you could please stand, name and address and your question.
Heidi Smith, 31 York Street, South Perth. I'm just wondering, with your motion, why is this something that we're looking for all of WALGA to do rather than just the City of South Perth?
Because it's a statewide issue.
Yeah.
And it's a citywide issue, it's an urban issue.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Mr Ridgway, a question? If again, once again, name, address and your question, please.
Ridgway, 24 Hobbs Avenue, Como. We have satellite information of all the trees in the whole state. There is no need for a special body. If you're interested in the trees, have a look at Google.
And this is heat mapping.
Okay, folks, I might jump in here. The purpose of these questions is if we don't actually understand what the nature of the motion is and what it's proposing. We would be here all night if I was allowing debate, but you are, of course, welcome to call or email your elected members. So unless there's any other questions about clarifying what it is that Ms Hughes' motion is intending to achieve, are there?
I might have one more. Heidi Schmidt, 31 York Street, South Perth. So what's the difference between what this gentleman said about aerial views of green stuff, so we know where all the trees are, compared to heat mapping? What's heat mapping show us?
My understanding, and I apologise if I'm not completely accurate with this, but my understanding with heat mapping is, like, for example, it will show the areas I'm a bit nervous. They will show the areas that have a higher temperature. Like they're going to show. I'm so sorry. I'm a bit nervous right now. Yes.
Can I check my understanding?
Yeah. So,
Folks, I am going to jump in here. I'm going to put Ms Hughes's motion to the vote. I appreciate the enthusiasm in the room here, but there are people here with families that probably want to get home at some stage. So I'm going to call a vote for Ms Hughes's motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. All right, all those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Ms Hughes, your motion is carried. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have had a record number of motions at this annual general meeting. We've had, if I'm counting it correctly, we've had 7 alone on trees. So I am going to suggest that we don't have any further motions from the floor about trees. You are we are absolutely welcome to contact your elected members, express your views. There's clearly some strong views in this room, but I think your council and your city has well and truly got the message as to what the people in this room are advocating for. Is there any other questions, statements? Yes, the gentleman at the back. And perhaps if you could give us your name and address and let us know if you're asking a question, making a statement or moving a motion.
Motion firstly and then a question, if I may, on another matter.
Please. Name and address, please.
Oliver Crosswaite, 3 Edinburgh Street, South Perth.
Thank you very much. And what's your motion?
Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to put the following motion. That the City of South Perth Council amend policy P210, street verges and the city street tree verge landscape guidelines to exclude artificial turf from a list of permitted verge treatments and then encourage other treatments that are environmentally friendly and sustainable.
Well, it's not trees, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that would like to second, sorry, what was your surname? Crosswaite, was it?
Crosswaite.
Crosswaite. Yes.
I'm sorry. Heidi Schmidt, 31 York Street, South Perth.
Thank you, Ms Schmidt. Mr Crosswaite, you have 3 minutes.
Currently, the city's provisions provide for the laying of synthetic turf on verges where permission has been obtained. This allows for anywhere from 50% to 100% of the verge, depending on its width, to be covered with this product. Euphemistically referred as turf, this product is a man-made synthetic plastic harmful to the environment. With declining rainfall, increasing temperatures, greater urban density, and the loss of vegetation from private property, trees and plants on verges play an increasingly important role in maintaining cooler, greener, and leafier streetscapes in an environmentally sustainable way. Artificial turf does none of this for the following reasons. 1, it affects the microbiology and prevents the effective take-up of nutrients by surrounding trees while depriving our native fauna, such as magpies and mudlarks, of a food source. 2, it deprives street trees and other plants of water that is sheeted off into the gutter to their detriment. 3, it is around 85% hotter than natural grass and astonishingly 28% hotter than bitumen and can cause severe burns, especially to children, and dramatically add to the urban heat island effect. 4, it doesn't filter pollutants like animal feces and urine, whose breakdown takes considerably longer than on natural grass, risking serious infection following a grazed injury. 5, damage to it is comparatively harder to repair, and where poorly laid or loose, it becomes unsightly and a tripping hazard. 6, it has a limited lifespan which may be shortened under abnormal wear and tear before ending up in landfill. 7, it is non-biodegradable, difficult to dispose of or recycle where its compacted foundation makes it difficult to re-establish trees and other plants. 8, it does not absorb carbon dioxide or produce oxygen. And 9, it makes accessing service infrastructure difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crossway. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question about understanding, clarity, or the interpretation? Yes, Mr. Osdelay. Sorry, name and address and question.
Unit 224, Barker Avenue, Como. Last time I read the policy on artificial turf was a fair while ago. And when I read it, it was very restrictive on not the percentage that you could use, but the actual quantum you could use, like it was 2 or 3 square metres. Are you aware that that policy is still the case, or has that changed?
1.5.
Square metres?
No, it's a width for a verge where you can cover the whole lot of it. If it's less than 1.5 metres wide.
And there's no restriction on length, as far as
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
All right. Any other questions? No. In that case, I'm going to put Mr. Crosswaite's motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. And all those opposed, please raise your hands and keep them raised. All right, Mr. Crosswaite, your motion is carried, and I understand you've got a question as well.
Mayor, councillors, with regard to the Sir James Mitchell Park at Elm Street end, could the city please explain why it asserts that making deals, quote, with entities like Wesley College for the exclusive use of up to 10 hectares of this prime riverfront parkland overlooking Harrison Island and owned freehold by the city should consider the risk to its reputational damage as low. Given that, 1, the land is worth far more than the paltry, quote, 1.5 million that the college has confirmed it is willing to contribute to the land's development for sporting activities. 2, Wesley, an elite private school, has resources and financial leverage obtained from its private and government sources to outbid the use of this priceless piece of foreshore by much less well-resourced government-run schools and other institutions. 3, the use of this land by the college will be, quote, required, which will, during these times, exclude others that are perhaps more needy and deserving. Shared use must be allocated on an equitable basis. 4, the land is prime public open space overlooking Perth water and is owned by the city on behalf of all its inhabitants to enjoy on an equitable basis. That it should be set aside for the private and privileged entity runs counter to a local government's obligations to ensure equity and fairness to all. And given that, 5, Wesley, together with Penrose College, is attempting to obtain further land adjoining its current boat shed that would more than double its current footprint to build a new boat shed on the South Perth foreshore overlooking Perth water. The shed itself is intended to take up 1,059 square metres, an excessive size that will be close to twice the average size of an ordinary residential block of land within the local government area of the city of South Perth. To repeat the question, in view of the above...
Actually, I don't think you need to repeat the question. That's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Our officers might have to take that one on notice because I must admit I lost the thread of it after the first minute. But Mr. Bradford, Ms. Amprimo?
The city is doing a feasibility study on Elm Street Fields. There's no agreements on who will use it or how it will be used to determine its feasibility. All other aspects of your question we'll have to take on notice, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Bradford, and thank you, Mr Crosswaite. Folks, we certainly weren't expecting this many questions, statements and motions tonight. We can probably accommodate one more. Is there anyone? Mr Russell? If you could please state your name and address and let us know if you're asking a question, making a statement or moving a motion.
My name is Stephen Russell, 9 Hobbs Avenue, Como. I'm asking a question. Good evening, everyone. In October 2023, Mayor Milner was re-elected for an additional 4-year term. Post the election, Mayor Milner went on the public record stating, "To the people of our city, thank you once again for putting your trust and faith in me." Fair enough, the community had re-elected the mayor back into office and they would rightly expect and trust him to get on with the job for a full mayoral term. However, media has reported that Mayor Greg Milner has nominated as a candidate for the Liberal Party for the state seat of South Perth for the upcoming state 2025 elections and in effect snubbing the office of mayor. I'm sure the community is having difficulties reconciling this action with his campaign to be re-elected as mayor. Hence, my question is to Councillor Coveney. Noting what I have just said, and that you and Mayor Milner had a mutual endorsement running up to the election, do you believe it is fair for the electors that voted for Mayor Milner as mayor that he now wants to be a state member of parliament so soon after being re-elected?
Mr Russell, as you would know from your own time on council, you can ask the question of the city, but you can't ask questions of individual councillors.
Actually, at the special electors meeting, there were
Mr Russell,
questions.
no, you're not the presiding member. I've told you what the rules are.
On the record,
can't ask
at
questions.
the special electors meeting regarding...
Councillor Russell, interrupt me one more time and I will turn off your microphone. Don't make me do that, please. The rules are the rules. You can ask a question of the city, but not of individual councillors.
So we have a rule for the electors meeting,
All
special
right,
electors meeting...
governance, can you please turn off Mr Russell's microphone? Mr Russell, please resume your seat. You are warned. It's alive and well, sir, but we are following the rules. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that everyone please be respectful and please follow the rules as they're set out. They are consistently applied. We allow these meetings to allow people to have their say, to put forward their motions, to make statements, to ask questions. We do that very happily, but rules are rules, and I'm not going to tolerate discourtesy. So with that, Councillor Russell, please resume your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm adjourning the meeting. Councillors, I'll meet you all on the Councillors' Lounge. We will resume when Councillor Russell has left the building. Former Councillor Russell. Well, that wasn't necessary, thank goodness. So that brings us to item 8, which is closure. I now close the Electors' General Meeting at 8:45 p.m. and I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. Thank you all and good night.